Good morning, everyone. Welcome. This is Angela Coulter and
Sarah Sieg Avignoni.
bringing you this week's Ascended World Collective Energy Share. And this week, we finally sort of have to have this, well, not have to, it's time to come to sort of a coming to Jesus with ourselves, all of us, that was such an easy conversation. And it was funny because we were both in our own little bubbles, and then you texted me yesterday morning, you're like, oh my God, what day is it? Did we actually do a pre-call talk? What, But we have had this. So we've been talking about control. We've been talking about all these things that have been going on, all these discussions, all these contentions, all of these judgments. And really, the bigger picture is looking at the big wave of negativity that we have it's seemingly pulled ourselves, or like not pulled ourselves, pulled ourselves into, or let ourselves fall into, sort of like quicksand.
Right.
And I don't think it wasn't there before. I think it wasn't as prevalent before.
Right. It was not on the surface. I think it was below pleasantries and politically correct things.
Yes.
That's out the window.
What is politically correct? It was funny. I watched Hamilton yesterday with the family. Have you seen that play?
No.
Yeah. So it's interesting because as a historical play, whatever, and of course having a history major and an archaeology major who are all like really into history, like watching it, my kids with me, and we were talking afterward, and I said, yeah, so it's interesting to see that basically politics in this country were the same pretty much from the beginning, and people just were constantly bickering, and it wasn't like everybody got along. They're like, oh no, we think it should go this way. No, we think it should go this way. And anyway, it's funny because I'm looking at that. You look at like all the judgments, and we've been talking about what judgment, right? And so I had decided, because I felt like social media has just dragged me more into the mud pit, the quicksand pit, than anything else recently, to just get off of social media for the weekend.
Right.
And you know what? I had a great weekend.
Yeah. Yeah. I hadn't been on social media much. I mean, compared to what I normally am, it's been nothing.
Yeah. I mean, I think, I'd log on if I got a direct notification, like for a message, like a private message, and
Right.
I think one time I looked on, and the funny thing is right at the top of the feed, there was some real negativity, and I was just like, yep, nope, shutting that down.
Right.
And it was a great weekend. I was in, I just basically lived my life.
Right.
And I did a lot of meditating. I did a lot of energy work. I stayed focused, and I felt good. I felt, I spent time with who I wanted to spend time with. And it was a holiday. Like, so the funny thing was, it was Independence Day, right? And I think it was funny because I'm like, well, it was really more of an independence from
Right.
the rest of the world for me.
Right. 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 Well,
that collective, the
right.
heaviness part of the collective that's going on right now. And I think you had something manifest too. That was.
I had a little bit of different weekend. I've been spending more time looking at the self-judgment, the criticism and controlling, and looking at how, even though it's disguised as sarcasm, it's still criticism, and how that points to the fact that I don't believe everything is perfect.
Right.
And as it should be. And I guess it was Saturday morning. I've lost track of what day was what. I got up, did my usual walk the dogs, and by the time I got back from walking the dogs, my eyes were practically swollen shut. And they didn't hurt, they didn't itch, they just felt swollen, heavy. And I took I took nettles, I took a bunch of homeopathic stuff, and finally I took a Claritin, which, helped, but number one, they were probably expired by 2 years because we just don't take that in my house.
Yeah, I have the same kind of thing. Like we have one package of like Allegra or something, just
Right.
in case.
And so I spent the day looking at what I don't want to look at, looking at that self-judgment and that loathing and that like, how could I have fooled myself into believing that I believed this when it was really this?
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, I've convinced myself that I'm aware of all this. And then there was still that layer. So, and that was without being on social media.
And your eyes were puffy. Like you sent me that
Oh
picture.
yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, it looks like you were boxing somebody.
Right? Yeah. I mean, they were bad. They were bad. And when I woke up yesterday morning, they had gotten better as the day went on, but were still puffy. And then I thought, well, surely overnight they'll have gone down. And they were back puffed up a little bit yesterday morning. And I did the same routine, but I was like, I am not gonna lay around because that did nothing. That did nothing. So I took all my stuff, walked the dogs, had no more reaction, and they were a little bit puffy this morning, but by the time I went to bed last night, they were normal. They were completely normal. And I mowed half the lawn yesterday. That's as much as I could do.
Yeah.
I set my I said, well, I won't let my heart rate get over a certain amount because I don't want to turn exercise into stressorcise.
Right.
And I set that limit. And when I got there, I was like, turned it over to my husband and said, you can finish.
Yeah. I mean, and then, yeah, when we talked and you were talking about that, I'm like, yeah, so all I think of is what are you irritated by what you see? Like, what are you irritated at with what you see? Because that's all right? What makes you irritated by what you're seeing, right? Which is all judgment.
Right.
And I was like, wow, that's perfect.
And
not perfect.
I noticed we were out yesterday, and I guess Friday at noon is when the state of Texas did the mandatory face masks. So it's the first time I've participated in that, except flying, which, on flights, it's like you can take it off to eat. There's lots of reasons to be able to take it off.
Yep.
Plus, you can lay over to your side and undo one side, and that's not so bad. But Friday was the first day that I had to wear them, everywhere I went publicly.
Right.
And it's funny, Saturday's the day it hit me. And then when we went out yesterday to return some stuff that we got on Friday, had to wear it again. And I mean, the irritation that I felt, and I was just like, okay, are they going to start swelling back up? Because this is,
right.
I'm now participating in the thing that irritates
me. Right. No, I know. And I actually had to deal with that too, because even though we had ours in North Carolina go into effect a week ago, I successfully avoided going into any store from 5 o'clock a week ago Friday until this weekend. I sent my husband, sent my kids, it was like, yeah, not doing it. But and when I went to the store Friday night was the first time, and so I had gone food shopping. But and that, me too. That was the first I've actually decided or just participated at all in that. And there was a moment, and that was what I was observing within myself, of walking into the store and looking around and thinking, look at all the sheep.
I know.
And then I was like, oh my God, stop judging, right? All you're doing is what you need to do what you need to do right now, right?
Right.
Stay focused and stay focused on your end goal, right? There's no judgment behind it. Just do it. It's like getting dressed in the morning.
It's like a check in the box.
That's right. So that's how I got through that for me.
Right. Well, it's the little things. Like I was telling you a story about what happened with the fireworks here. They moved them because they weren't having crowds. So they moved them to a more central location, even though it wasn't that much more central, but into a field. And so they set up the fireworks, and everywhere that something dropped caught on fire. So we had little fires everywhere, everywhere.
Which I laughed when you told me about
I
that.
know, it's
Yeah.
like the title of that
That
TV
show.
series.
Yeah.
Um, but I was so judgmental. I was like, why didn't they just leave it alone? Can you believe, I could have told him that would have caught on fire, and how stupid was this? And it was like, blah, judge, blah, judge, blah. And
Right.
actually it was perfect,
Right.
because whatever needed to get someone's attention or whatever caught on fire, or, and it was perfect. But yet I was sitting in a place of, no, this isn't perfect. It shouldn't have been that way.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I had my commitment going into the weekend and taking my break from social media and everything else was to stay present, the basics of what we talk about all the time, right?
Right.
So staying present and staying conscious and observant and in a place of acceptance, right? So every time, so I stayed in observance and I too was funny. And I noticed that, my husband and I take our walks every morning, right? And I noticed that, and actually because Friday was sort of like a semi-holiday, right?
Right.
And he was off work and I had a lighter day and whatever. And then the weekend, so we did our 4.5 mile walk. So it was a longer, like an hour and a half walk versus the 45-minute walk that we usually take, right? All 3 days. And then I was like, okay, so, and I said in the beginning, the first day I was like, okay, so let's just talk about the stuff that makes us happy.
Right.
Let's just talk about the stuff that, is at least neutral, if not positive. And the first day I stopped us because I committed myself to staying conscious. I stopped both of us no less than half a dozen times on that walk, right? We would start and right away, because we're like, oh, I can't believe. As soon as you say I can't believe, there's a judgment right behind that, right?
Right. Right.
And that just
or if you question, like, why would somebody?
Yeah, exactly. I don't understand why somebody blah blah blah, right?
We dress it up so nice.
We do.
Right.
And so like I was staying very conscious of that. And it was the first day was the most challenging because I was like, oh my gosh. And then of course, then I'm judging the judgment. Then I'm like, oh my God, look at how much we're judging. Oh my God. Right. But it was like, okay. And I would stop my husband in the middle of a thought, and I would stop myself and be like, yeah, you know what? Let's just change the subject.
Right.
And I said, and I'm not, I'm not for the, if you have nothing nice to say, just to say nothing at all, because it implies that you should just internalize and stuff it down. But the thing is, it's true in the way of observe it within yourself, stop it there, right? To take the ownership of it, to say, okay, well, this is coming from me. This is my own self-judgment, right?
Right. And how would I prefer to see it? So internalizing the negative, massage it, transform it, and project what you'd like to see.
Right. I mean, we have an entire world set on comparatives, which we've talked about, right? The duality and the coexistence of both ends and all that kind of stuff. But this is so deeply embedded with us that we are in this constant state of comparisons. And I don't understand why somebody would do this, because it's not what I would do, right?
It's really what we're saying, which is when you change the terms of it into that raw, boiled down, this is what I really mean. It's like, oh, wow. Yeah, that needs to be looked at.
Yeah. And like, let's see. Oh, and I meant to say good morning to Gloria and Yasmin, who said good morning. And then Gloria said, absolutely. Yeah.
Right.
So it's this constant, like, I don't understand. And why would somebody do this? And and how do they not see this? Right. That's all judgment.
Right.
And so it's playing the same game and perpetuating the same habits. Right. And that is negativity, because it's putting somebody else down because you're comparing your choice is better.
Right. Right.
Instead of all choices,
your decision, your creation.
Right. Versus all choices are perfect. Right.
Exactly. And necessary.
Right. And so right now, and I feel like there's something else that's going on under the surface that we can't yet see, but there's some real importance to us coming to resolution with this negativity and this judgment, and to let it go, right?
Rather than flowing with the tide of the negativity and just going with that flow, there's a reason to step out of that.
Right. And change
so
it.
that we can be in a different awareness to align with the other that we can't see yet.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, with that commitment for myself this weekend. So I found the first day was the hardest in that walk, right? And then the second day was a ton better.
Right.
And by yesterday, it was a great conversation. We were, it was a lively, happy, we were laughing a lot. And it's funny, that only took 3 days.
Well, and it just shows you that as ingrained as we believe it is, it's just a habit like everything else.
It truly is. And so like by this morning we did our walk, and it was like, I didn't even think about anything but what was on the walk with us. Like, so, the rabbits we saw, the hawks, we actually saw a deer this morning, we were like, talking about different things. And like, we would talk to people that passed, like, it was just a very positive experience. And
if you think about it, think of that bubble that you're creating in that negativity. And as you walk, it goes with you.
Yes.
And the animals being more attuned are like, yeah, I don't want any part of that.
Right. And so, and then probably why they're so much more active around us when we are in that different kind of bubble, right?
Right.
Of positivity instead, right? And so, like, what I've talked about it in my Living the Shift podcast on Thursday. I started talking about what if we just decided to take everything and see it from the most positive light,
right?
How perfect it is in the bigger picture,
right? And I was telling you about my husband who owns a hospital, and he always watches the COVID numbers, and he said, look at Texas. Look at how the cases have increased, but the deaths have gone up slightly. It hadn't been, and he said, look at what a good job we're doing. We're actually moving through it.
Yes. And funny, I told you I had the same conversation with my sister who's up in New York, in the middle of the hotspot, right? And actually a hotspot on many accounts right now.
Yeah.
But and she said the same thing. We were talking, she used to be a nurse. She's a psychologist now, but she used to be a nurse. And she even said, she's like, yeah. And we were talking about that. And I said, the funny thing is I look at this and I'm like, okay, so when you want to compare, the big conversation last week was, oh, how Europe doesn't want to let us, over and blah, blah, blah. And then people are like, oh, well, look at how crappy we are and look at how, bad we're doing. And it's like, well, first of all, you can't compare the population of the United States to the population of like France.
No.
So, I went and looked at the CDC. I looked at the European version of that, which is the European Center of Disease Control or something like that. And was comparing. And so I was like, okay, let me find the population numbers that are comparable, because everything is taken out of context right now, and really look at what it looks like. So I took, like, say it was like France, Italy, the UK, Germany, and Spain. And that about is close to all 5 of those countries together were close to the population of the United States. So then I added those numbers up and looked at the numbers of, like, how many people got it versus, and then how many deaths there were. So the interesting part was, so we had like 2 some odd million, and they had like 1 some odd million. So it's about half of what we have. Okay. But then when I looked at the death rate, we had a lower death rate of those 5 countries that had half of the amount of cases that we had, right? And I'm going, well, that to me says that we're managing it really, really well.
Well, we're doing what needs to be done, because the world is not going to just come to a grinding halt and us all of a sudden decide that we're going to be little separate individuals, separate households with no connection to anybody, all self-sufficient. That's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Not going to happen. So the solution is you get it.
Yeah. And so, and when we stop judging that, because we get a whole lot of things, we get all kinds of bacterial infections, we get all kinds of viral, our bodies are built with an immune system, right, for that. And so anyway, we don't need to go down that path.
Right.
The whole thing was, like you said, when you said that, what your husband said, I'm like, yep. And then I was talking to my sister about that, and she's like, I know. She goes, and she's in the middle of one of the biggest hotspots. And she's like, yeah, and you know what? I know a number of people have had it and they are fine. It was like they just sort of had the flu. None of them were hospitalized. They just sort of got through it.
Right.
Because we are built to do that. And now I saw some stuff. I did see something come up in my email, actually, that was talking about how, they're finding now that people are actually, like, they were like, oh, people won't build antibodies to this. And that was the big, scare. And they're finding that people are registering it as having antibodies to it after being exposed. Now it's like, oh, well, look at that. Our immune systems are working. Yay. And that's awesome. So so when we look at it from that perspective, it's like, well, that's great. So that means we can move on with life, right?
Right.
And so, yeah, Gloria says, it would be devastating emotionally and economically if we come to a stop. Well, the thing is, nothing ever stops, even if it crumbles, right? So we can say devastating, that's also a judgment, right? If we, and see, that's the words that we're using, devastating and terrible and horrific and all that kind of stuff, which just feeds into this negativity. It's like, okay, and what am I looking at, right? Like, what do we look at right now? Okay, you know what? We have a really broken way of trying to function right now in this world.
I know.
Right? And so maybe it's great.
Judgment.
And maybe it's great for us. Perfect. Because if it doesn't work for us, then it's to crumble away so that we can create.
It'll drive new behavior.
Right. And so, and the key goes back to what we've been talking about for years, which is committing ourselves to always acting from a place of love, unconditional love and acceptance.
Right. Well, and even as a kid, if there's a bully or if there's, someone who's mean at school, parents are always like, don't engage that behavior, don't meet them, because that just gives them power over you.
Take the high road.
That's where we are right now, is where, you step away from that negativity and you take away their power.
Yes.
Or its power over you, that fear.
Yes. Right. And that comes from that self-work. Again, was like every week we come back to the self-work.
Exactly.
Good morning, Patricia. And so so it's like coming to that place of unconditional self-love. And that's the work for us to do, because as long as we're still judging, right, and we do it at so many levels, and that's that negativity of, again, let's just watch ourselves this week on I don't understand why they would do this, and so it's funny because, like I said, you and I both had to look at our personal bias on the whole like mask thing and all that kind of stuff. And it was like, whoa, to hear myself, to be observant to what my thoughts were, and that, like, wow, whoa, stop,
Right. Well, and if you can't look at your own, accomplish that release of your own self-judgment, the bigger picture is just a magnification of that.
Yes.
So you'll be less successful in accomplishing the bigger picture if you can't master the inner picture.
Yes. And it was funny because, so I've been, we put up a hammock in our back, and we have the woods back there for those who don't know and stuff. And it's beautiful. It's fabulous and a wonderful place to go meditate. And so it was Saturday. I told you Saturday. I think it was Saturday. Maybe it was Friday. No, Saturday. I was out there meditating on the hammock and got into this really deep place. And then I saw like Saint Germain and Ezekiel and Adama, for those who know, and who I haven't seen in a really long time, and other facets of me, right? Other facets of the divine, who said to me, why are you allowing yourself to get pulled into that undertow? Stay above it. You know how to stay above it. Stay above it.
Yeah,
you are above it.
Good word for it.
Yeah. And so it's like, oh, well, right, because that's exactly like an undertow. Like, you think it just pulls you out.
Well, yeah, pulls you right into that negativity.
And I just got this impression of importance, and there was so many present, and whatever different facets of the divine reflected back to me as me, whatever. And it was all about, it was so important to stay in the bigger picture, so important to see it, see it and not be in it, like not
Right.
be pulled out by it.
Right.
And so I was like, yeah, I get it. I think it
Yeah,
might.
and it is the importance to be able to see it and almost witness it without participating. Like I said, we talk about, just don't watch the news, just don't do these things. But that's the same as saying, well, just if you just don't expose yourself to it, then you won't succumb to it. But that doesn't really change anything. It
What did
still holds
you called
that.
it? What did you call it? Creative avoidance, I think you called it, right? Something like that. We were talking yesterday.
Probably. Right.
Oh, yeah.
Tricia says, yes, unconditional love, the good and the bad, light, dark, all that is in full acceptance, the bigger picture. Right. Exactly.
Well, right, because it's only what we make it to be, right?
Right.
So like, again, as long as we judge what we think is dark as bad, right? That's still a judgment.
Right. Yeah,
And
it's like I was listening to that song and I heard the darkness referred to as the holy dark. And I was like, you're right, because it was here first.
yeah.
If
Well,
if go by the Bible.
well, I think, I think they were both created. Like, if you think about it in duality, dark and light would have had to been created together, right? So the creative void is just nothing and everything.
Yeah.
I guess we didn't define it as anything until, yeah. Because, yeah, like I said, yeah, but it is, if the light is divine, so is the dark. That's
Exactly.
the duality. That's the opposing duality that we've created, right? Because it's all holy, it's all sacred, it's all divine.
Right.
And so even the people, and that's what I say, the most challenging thing for us to come to peace with are those who we disagree with, right? At the deepest levels, right? The people who trigger us, the people who we think are just so wrong, quote unquote, right? Patricia says, knowing how to discern which of those undertows are ours to observe are coming to us from the collective. Yeah. Well, and that's the whole thing is that commitment to seeing it within ourselves the
Right.
moment it happens, because it's so automatic, we don't even realize we do it.
Right. Right.
It's like that was me all weekend. It was like, oh, stop. I see it.
Right. And I think that we're most blind to those that are internal to us because we've developed workarounds and cover-ups and partitions to hide that.
Yes. And well, in justifications, right? Because in the mind says, well, I know the right. I know what my right.
Exactly.
And
right.
that's the judgment we make on everything else, is that my right is more right than your right.
Right.
And everybody else is right. And so we don't ever say that out loud, but that's what we believe.
It is.
And
You're
so
right.
instead of, and the shift to make is my right is perfect for me as your right is perfect for you. Right.
Exactly.
And
at this moment in time.
Right in this present moment.
Right.
Whatever is that, like, and so, because, all right, think about this, like how many times in our lives that we were in a certain place, like, you look back at certain things that you've done, right? And that Patricia says, I love that we're all divine. Yeah, we're all divine. When we look back at things that we did that we want to regret, right?
Right.
And you say, well, I did the best with what I had at that moment. I did the best with where I was at that moment. But that's the truth.
Right. And it got me to where I am right now. So it was perfect.
Exactly. So it was perfect.
It always is perfect.
Right. And so we were talking.
But what's there to be negative about or criticize?
Right.
Even
when we
if
come
it's
to
wearing a face mask.
Exactly.
It's perfect to get us to where we need to go.
Right. Right. Now, it doesn't mean that we don't ever change anything. It's
right. Right.
But it's changing us from, like, what you and I've talked about on these things in the past, which is, instead of asking what should I do, it's what is there for me to do? What is there for me to be? Right.
Right.
Instead of what should I be? What should I do? Because that's all ego, right? And that's all subjective. But it's like, what is there for? And when we come to that place of accepting that it's all perfect, it's like, okay, so if I'm guided to go and do a public speech on something, then I'll be guided to do that, right? Or
right.
Or if I'm guided to go sit in my garden, that's okay too. Like, and that's what many are going through also, I found right now, and talking with clients and stuff again, has been the judgment on the self of going, well, I've really just enjoyed being in my garden. I've
Right.
just enjoyed blah, blah, blah. I've just enjoyed doing this. And I'm like, okay, so what's the matter with that? Because you're finding enjoyment in the present with yourself,
Right.
which is great. And even if you're doing so, like, even if you're, the thing is always to ask, what is there for me to do here? Right. That's where we start talking about with energy work is, okay, so you're running yourself ragged, which is how many have done in the past, which is what we've had sort of a break from. So what is there for you to do?
Right.
With the goal of being able to flow, right, without resistance in a place of love and acceptance.
Right.
And that recognition of, like, and I say that, and it's so funny because I'm like, oh my God. So, and I understand it's such an embedded habit for us because I've been consciously doing this for more than a decade now. And it's still something that I catch myself with all the time. And I am committed to consciously catching up with it myself. And
Right.
and I teach I teach unconditional love, and I talk about that and how to get to that and everything else. So I'm committed to my own practice on practicing what I preach, kind of thing.
Right.
And so I know that a vast majority are still not in that practice, right? So like what was interesting was I literally got on Facebook for maybe 5 minutes this morning before we got on, just to browse through quick, right? And it was interesting to see, well, I don't understand, like these are the things I was seeing posted. Well, I don't understand why this person could be talking about like not wearing masks and building up an immune system because blah, 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 and that doesn't make any sense. And then you have other people like, and it's like all these different perspectives. And it was all like, I don't understand, or I can't believe this person would do this. And I'm just like, so what we've really created in social media is a really big gossip circle.
Right. Right. Or a platform for outrage.
A platform for judgment.
Right. Because that's the only thing that gets anybody's attention.
And so I was like, so that's why I found it so much more refreshing to be away from that, because I chose my conversation this entire
Right.
weekend, which I've done in the past, but it has gotten very loud collectively, very loud right now, right? And we're bringing this up on purpose.
Right.
And the question is, what is there for us to do from this? Mass things and imposition, like needing to conform. Yeah. And that's how we can see it. And the whole funny thing is we can see that the conforming thing, right? And then right away what happens, these judgments start to bubble up.
Oh yeah.
They're not even that deep anymore. They just go right on up. I mean, and so, and I'm looking at the way the wave is, so it pulls so many in, and then they start to blind themselves, right? And convince themselves that this is right and this is wrong, right? And they will do everything they can do to, and this is what we do, this is what the ego does. I will do everything I can do to what? To, what's the word I'm looking for? Everything we can do to justify our position on something.
Right.
Patricia says, but the beauty is that we have the power to choose. That is true. Absolutely.
Well, and when it comes to the face mask, the choice is, if you don't want to wear it, stay home. That's a choice too. And I choose to wear it if I want to go into to this store or this store.
Yeah. Yeah. And so like, so with me, it was, I did have my little pointedness though. And so I made sure that I didn't put my mask on until the moment I was walking in the store. I took it off the second I was walking out.
Oh, I absolutely do that too.
I literally wasn't even at the door, and I was just like, okay, back in my back pocket kind of thing. But but and that's fine. And it's honestly, here's the thing. The reality is it's fine. The choice is everyone's, right? What they do in their reality is perfect for them.
Right.
And that's what's important for us to get to. And so I'm there like a majority of the time, but I've just found because, and you know what happens is this wave comes up, and I don't know about you, but the whole thing like that I've noticed, and I think that's the whole thing with the social media is the wave comes up and more we get defensive because it feels like it's trying to suffocate us for having a different stance on, say, like what something is in the
Well,
majority.
and I think we talked about that. I know that years ago when I was in healing school and we talked about being defensive to like someone sending you, you know, dissident energy or whatever to affect you, is not to put up the wall, but to just let it go through. And that the same as with this negativity is to let it just wash through you and not stick, and don't have to stand rigid against it, but to just be ambivalent to it, because that immediately disempowers it.
Right.
And that's embracing it, allowing it.
Yes. Right. And that's what I've said from the beginning is okay. So I think my judgment started getting up because my back started getting up because so many are just trying to trash the whole, like, not wearing, and and right away, then the ego starts to go, right.
Right.
So, no, I'm going to tell you 50 reasons why you shouldn't be wearing, like, and that's ego. Right.
Right.
Instead of like what, and the thing that I've said so many times or we've said since the beginning is, it's choice. It's your choice.
Right.
My choice is perfect for me and your choice is perfect for you. And that's where it's for us to stop. Right. Not that my choice is better or that I have to justify my choice, because you know what I've actually really got worked on over the years, being okay with just my choice because of my guidance.
Right.
Right. And I don't feel that
it's like we've talked more and more about my choices, choosing to look at my health and my own immunity versus to just fall into the fear and make assumptions of how this is going to affect me.
Right.
I'm going to stand in the power of my immune system and looking at my health. And I've taken a harder look at my health and how I eat and my levels of exercise. Like I said, I didn't want to stress-ercise. I wanted to exercise.
Mm-hmm.
And that's setting limits for myself. Whereas before I'd be like, oh no, it's exercise, push through. But I'm taking another look at that from the perspective of what is healthy for me.
Right. And so one of the misnomers that I think many get stuck in is that the doctors know all the answers.
Right.
For me. Or for everybody. Right? And that changes.
You have that good 90 seconds they spend with you. They should know you better than you know yourself.
Yeah. And right. Or if
there's no judgment there.
I'm just talking about, I was actually talking about the even bigger ones, the medical experts that go out there and are like, oh, well, this is what the thing to do. Right. Well, look at how many things have changed over the past like several months, from week to week sometimes, and it's like, okay, yes, there is a medical field. There are people who study this, but here's the thing. We also have a consciousness field, and the consciousness field is knowing thyself, right? And that is more important than anything else. And when we get to, and I want to say that because when it goes back to, and of course that is a more, which is an ego thing, but the thing is, for us to transcend this, for us to get past that wave, that undertow, right, is to come into that trust, which we've said a bajillion times, right? That trust in going inside and knowing that I have all the answers for me. And that's all that's important, is I am in charge of my journey because I am the divine as embodied as me. And I came with all the answers for myself.
Right.
Just like you came with all the answers for you. And it's just that we've gotten so far out of the habit of listening to our bodies, and instead we listen to everybody else saying, oh well, like this and this and this, and then, well, look at over the years, let's look at trends. Have cholesterol, don't eat cholesterol. Oh, eat some cholesterol, right? Oh, there's good cholesterol, bad cholesterol. Oh wait, eat fat, don't eat fats.
I don't know if this was the Saturday Night Live skit or what, but they had someone who was having breakfast,
Uh-huh.
and they had somebody from the future come in and say, "Oh no, you shouldn't eat that egg." So they take the egg away, and then that same person comes back and goes, "Oh no, wait a minute," and gives them back the
Oh,
egg.
I saw that one actually. I looked that up.
And then finally it was just like, you know what? Just don't eat. Just don't eat, because we just don't know.
And that's the funny thing is, so when we start to truly listen to our bodies, right? We see
Right.
the messages it's giving to us, right? Yeah, Gloria says eat eggs or don't.
Right.
But, and yes, you know what? We are medical experts. We are
Right.
our own medical experts. And the thing is that we
Exactly.
have given it away, the power away to so many for so long that it's,
Charlie.
yeah. Well, you have a dog?
On the chair. Charlie.
Charlie agrees.
Right, right. Like the frogs.
But yeah, so the thing is, when we start listening, to our guidance, right? And part of the guidance has to do with the messages. So we've set up our bodies to be physical message boards for ourselves. And
Right.
we've just forgotten that. Like, so we think that us getting sick or a disease, including COVID, or cancer, or illness, diabetes, or multiple sclerosis, or any kind of autoimmune system thing, or cancer, like all of that, it's all a message of stuff that is preventing us from being a flow of the max optimal presentation of what we're here to be, right?
Right.
And it's all from that internal toxin. So any of us who've worked with that for a long time, and I can tell you, I've like working with as many people over the years as I've had, is when they shift that stuff, it greatly alleviates or resolves even things the doctors say, oh, you can't get over this, or you can't change this. You can change anything, right? So that goes back to that. When we trust that within ourselves, and when we get into the habit of trusting that within ourselves, I can walk through a field of people with a bubonic plague, and I will not even bat an eyelash thinking that I would get sick.
Right.
Because I don't need that message. And that's what we've been talking about from the beginning. But to do that is for us to get through this judgment thing, because the judgment and the negativity, by the way, negativity breeds disease. Negativity breeds all kinds of disease, all kinds of toxins. It breeds the depression of the immune system on top of it.
Right.
It takes our defenses down because it suppresses us. We allow it to suppress us. And so the funny thing is, we're sitting here arguing over like who's right, who's wrong, blah, blah, blah. I can't believe this. I can't believe that. I can't believe these people would think this. I can't believe it. How stupid, how ignorant, like I see these conversations going on all the time, right? And all of that contributes to more sickness.
Exactly. Exactly.
So for us is to really get out of the cycle to a place of more well-being, and what we do with that is positivity, right? And I think I even talked, I don't know if I talked about this Thursday or we talked about this last Monday, but it ties back to, you know, if you've not seen Dr. Emoto's stuff, The Hidden Messages in Water, right?
Right.
You've got Lynn McTaggart's stuff, all like the intention experiment and a bajillion things she's done. There's a ton of stuff out there in quantum physics. It all talks about where the energy goes, you know, what did they say? The energy goes?
Where your attention goes, your energy flows.
Your energy flows. Where your attention goes, the energy flows. So the more we put to negativity and sickness, the more we create negativity and sickness.
Right. Absolutely.
So it's our choice. So if we want to judge, then let us judge in the positive sense.
Right. And let us look with, goes with the saying, you know, so as above, so below. So within, so without. So start with within. Look at your judgments within.
Yeah,
And
I
see
mean,
what you're judging about yourself.
look at what we say. What do we say to ourselves every day?
Right.
Oh, I'm not pretty enough. My eyes are swollen. Oh, I look like crap. I look blah blah blah. I can't be seen in public because of this, because I look terrible. Yeah, like these are things we say to ourselves, right? Oh, I can't go out in public like this.
Right.
Or,
Right.
oh, I wish I had whatever, thicker, thinner hair, straighter, more curly, this color, that color. I wish I had a different body type. I wish, like, and we perpetuate that by pretty much convincing ourselves and each other that there's a way to be that's perfect,
Well, and that what we are is wrong.
and that what we are is wrong. Exactly. And I mean, everything, even the belief system, like what even the Bible talks about, how, oh, well, we start out as sinners, and, like,
We're born with sin.
you're basically a loser.
Right. Yep. And you spend your whole life getting up to being not quite as much a loser.
That's what we've convinced ourselves. So at some level, we've convinced ourselves we start out, as deficient, and we have to prove ourselves, and we have to attain worth, and we have to do all this kind of stuff. So the whole thing, and what we talk about in Trinity and whatever too, is we are divine already. We are the divine embodied, is what we choose to embody as for whatever this whole symphony is that we chose to create. Right. And so it's perfect. Why wouldn't it be? If we're the divine, we're all of it. Of course it's perfect.
Right.
And so if we come in saying, oh, well, I come in and I'm perfect, I am perfectly embodied for what I came here to do, that changes the energy of our entire life.
Everything that happens to us.
And everything that we choose to do, right? We come at it from a different place of, instead of saying, oh, I wish I could be this way, or I'm not this way, or I just can't do this, to, I am awesome at everything I choose to do. Right. In the way that I do it, even if it's not like, in the same way as everybody else.
Right. Even if it doesn't meet others' expectations, because that's through their filter.
And that's where we get to these ideas of, oh, these people have to know more than I do about me, because I'm just a loser, right? That's what we say essentially it's what we say in our heads. That's
what we say, right?
Even if it's not even,
that is what we say.
Right. That's the energy, right? Say, oh, well, this person's got to know more than me, or these people have to know more than me, or they have to just, yes, Gloria says taller, haha, yeah, or I want to be taller.
He is awesome.
Yeah, and she says, yes, I'm awesome. Yes, you are awesome. And so that's the whole thing. What I have said so many times in the whole progression of bringing the practice of Trinity in since 2011, it has been, the biggest challenge is having people see that within themselves, that they are divine and infinitely able, right?
And that doesn't mean that anybody else is less divine.
No, it means that we're all equally divine.
Right.
And it's like, yeah, I can say, yes, I'm God, and so are you.
Right.
I'm
my
awesome.
divinity doesn't diminish your divinity.
Exactly. And my awesomeness doesn't diminish your awesomeness, right? In our own individual ways. And so when we start to come to life from that perspective, how can you be negative? Because then you're just like, oh, look at how awesome that is. Look at how awesome you're having of an experience. And what's interesting is the veil that we've pulled over ourselves, because we've made so much progress, and it's almost like we want to damper ourselves because, I don't know, we want to continue this. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, we've talked about that, right? The ego's going on. We've loved this.
Or we have to have the pendulum swing so far the other direction that we can come back to where we then shift forward.
Well, right. Or just having that recognition at that level, right?
Right.
Of the polarities.
It's like we've done the light, now we're going to do the dark so we can all accept it all and move forward.
Right. And so, and you got to wonder if at some level it's like, okay, well, no, I'm ready for this. I'm ready for this. I'm ready for that. And I'm talking about those of us who've worked, what I call an active spiritual path and consciousness and observance and everything else, right? to get to this place, and then all of a sudden get pulled into this undertow. And you got to wonder if there's some part of us, obviously, at some level, that's still really going, oh, but just a little more, just a little more taste. I just want another taste, just a little tiny taste.
Right. Right. Now I get that. I get that.
I want a little more suffering. I want a little more, anger, and I want a little more like, in your face.
A little bit more sacrifice.
Yeah. And we laugh about that, but it's because it sounds ridiculous. There's a judgment, but to the mind, it sounds ridiculous.
And I'm so awesome. I need to experience that horribleness that I think I am.
Look at how awesome my horribleness is.
That's it. That is it.
Yep. Look at how awesome my negativity is.
If I'm going to be negative, I'm going to be the most negative there is.
Right. That's right. And so so just even talking about it this way and laughing about it, it makes it feel completely different, right?
It does. It really lightens it.
It makes it feel so much more accepting because you're like, oh yeah. So like
I can do this.
I can do this. I can call myself out
positive negativity all day long.
Look at how awesome I am at judging that. Oh, and what if, so when we say that though, when we start doing that to ourselves and we laugh, then we can say, oh, look at how awesome that person is for judging everybody else, right? And then that takes away any judgment at all, because it's like, oh, look at how awesome that is. Look at how divine that is. Right? So, okay, so for today, I can't believe it's already 25 after 10.
Oh my gosh, wow.
So let's do our little session.
Right.
Let's do being able to observe that, being able to observe through the eyes of the divine as the divine, right?
Right.
Remembering that within ourselves, and thus being able to remember that with each other, and committing ourselves to that in every moment of our experience, even when we fall into the habit or we fall into the quicksand or the undertow for a moment, right?
Right.
Because as soon as you say that to yourself, oh, look at how awesome I am at being negative, you have to laugh. And then it's like, oh, well, now I'm not negative anymore. So
right.
What the hell? So whatever it is for us to do that, that's like have that observance, and that see, I always find that the laughter is so much, it breaks up so much so fast.
It's such a good release.
It is. And so it's like, what if we just allowed that in a way that's a laughter and upbeat, and it breaks it away so much more easily. Oh, that brings to mind, it was funny this morning, we were walking toward the end of our walk, we're on the path, and I said to my husband, for some really weird reason, this part of the path, which is paved, I was like, it looks like it's breaking up. I said, more so than I think I've noticed in the past. I'm like, does this look weird to you, or is it just something? And he goes, no, I think it's just been this way. And I'm like, I don't know. It feels like it's like almost like ready to break apart. And he goes, yeah, it could be the reality that we're perceiving. And I was like, oh, you're right.
It's crumbling away.
And maybe that's the energy I was feeling, right? And I was like, oh yeah, good observant, awesome observance there. I was like,
right.
Yeah. So now what's going to come, and to allow what's next to come to the surface in a much cleaner way, right?
Right.
So whatever there is for us to be able to be observant of that within ourselves, right? Every little step, every little thought, every little word, and allow us to turn it back to within ourselves and remember all the awesomeness and everything, and the potential, instead of the judgment to try to squash something down, the potential of everything in its awesomeness. That feels really good.
That feels really good.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, so let's go. Anybody who's listening or watching who doesn't know what we're doing, just close your eyes, take a deep breath, and be willing to receive. We're just going out in the collective to set that creation. Let's go. Mhm. Oh, that was nice. Yeah, another thing that I saw out there was the importance of forgiving, apologizing and forgiving ourselves, apologizing to and forgiving ourselves for the judgment of ourselves and others as well, right? Forgiving ourselves for judging others and ourselves, and apologizing and knowing. And then there was a whole bunch of laughter out there, which we'll have to talk about another week because it had to do with that conversation we had in the car about Jesus.
Oh, yeah.
And the human experiment.
Right.
But you know, and I know it's funny, we brought that up we brought up that the whole Christian thing a lot today, which is not typical for us, but I mean, it's just one of many that we it's all part of the same thing.
The the thing that I noticed when I was out there is, we talk about being all facets of the divine, and it's like doing the self work is like polishing your own facet.
Yes.
So that the whole gem can shine. Or even if you want to look at it as the note in the symphony, every note needs to be tuned.
Yes.
And
Or not only
that's
just
what
tuned, but fully realized as that note that
right.
it is,
And
right?
so that's what I felt that this was a step towards, was that self-tuning and becoming aware of your note.
Right. Well, and it was, I
A
think,
facet.
did we talk about this last week? I think we talked about something along this line last week. Because I also got that whole, the reason for these deeply rooted judgments that we're not even conscious of it coming up to the surface is so that we can acknowledge them, forgive ourselves, apologize, and have gratitude for the experience to let it go, right?
Right.
And so that's part of the process too, which is why I think we had such an intense week after our thing last Monday. So
Yeah, I would agree.
So, but this felt fabulous, much softer, much more expansive, and just commit to where you choose to be this
Right.
week,
Right.
and be observant. So thank you for joining us. Have a great week. We'll see you next time. This is Angela Coulter and
Sarah Sieg Avagnoni.
signing off on this week's Ascended World. Have a good one.